silence to remember those who lost their lives in the Grenfell tragedy. And as I always say, please just make sure that your phones or computers don't beep. Thank you. Thank you. Any apologies for absence? Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? And then the minutes of the previous meeting, can I please sign these as a true and accurate record?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay. The first item on the agenda is the Children and Young People's Fund, but absolutely nothing. So, Sarah? I think it's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Catherine, yes, yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to congratulate the team, all the team, for producing such a fantastic report here. And I think the key thing about this is that we know that children, because of 2 years of COVID, they've had a really tough time, and now with the cost of living crisis on top of it. What is great is that we're showing in this document how we have got our 7 different priorities as to how we're going to support them over the next few years. I think they're excellent priorities, but the key thing about this that I think is very unusual is that their priorities are really co-designed with the children in the borough in mind. And we had an exceptional number of consultations and people who actually got involved in the consultation. So there were 283 children, 247 adults, which actually, not to be boastful, but compared to the number that consulted in Westminster is absolutely massively higher. Well done. So you'll see that in there. So I think this really is reflecting on what we were told by children and by parents of what they thought their priorities were. And I guess not so unusually, the things that came out as the top priorities obviously a really good and high standard of education, which we know we have in this borough, and we want to continue doing so. Mental health, and then also for the older children, sort of education and how to get into jobs. But just quickly to point out a couple of the design features that I really love about this is on the pages where we've got the priorities and mapped out what they are, the priorities. It's that thing of the things at the bottom of what we will do, but then how we will know. So the matrix of what we're going to measure when we look at those as to how we're going to do it, and then what other strategies are on. And I just think it's so great to see that so clearly put in a document as to how we are going to come back with an impact report on this. And I also really like the little scan the QR codes, which we will actually hear the voices of the children themselves who contribute to this document. So I just highly recommend it and thank all the officers for producing such an excellent strategy.
I think you're right. It's really great the way it's so clearly laid out. Because otherwise sometimes you have very long documents, but you sort of get a bit lost in them. Whereas this one, don't get lost at all. It's fabulous. Sarah.
So thank you. I think this is a brilliant report. And the amount of co-production that you've done, engaging with young people is fantastic. And I think you've done a really good job. So just a quick question is, what is different in this plan to previous plan?
you want me to take that, Catherine?
Well, as I wasn't involved in the
Yeah.
previous campaign.
This has really been co-produced with young people. We spent a lot of time thinking about how best to engage young people so that we could think about what they want their future to look like. So we used a scenario book club that was really looking at the world in 2035 and what young people wanted it to look like in order to draw out from them what they thought was most important to them. So I think the thing that stands out for me that's really different this time is it really has been co-produced.
But apart from that, are most of the things that you're looking to do pretty similar?
Well, I think what's quite interesting, I guess, is following COVID, the issues around emotional well-being and mental health, but also that readiness for employment that I don't think was really as strong in the last plan.
Thank you. Are there any other questions before we adopt it?
Just a quick question.
Josh.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Catherine. I think obviously priority forward is wonderful, as you mentioned, Sarah, about the kickstart scheme especially, and building that kind of skills for employment. And one of the questions I have is, we refer to it at the back about how it will be measured, but if things aren't going as right, or if people aren't stepping up to the plate necessarily, utilising each other for providing, how can we ensure that it does get the most benefit out in the community, and how do we promote it as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We're just in the process of putting together the dashboard of all of the measurements, so that we can start collating the data on a regular basis, so that if we see that there's an area where we're not getting traction or making an impact, we can think about what else we need to do differently.
Great, thank you, Lisa.
Very much.
Oh, just a quick question about on page 18 and 19, where you provide engagement, which I think is fantastic in this simple thing. So on page 10, I'm not sure. They're not numbers different. Page 10 of the whole report. And it's great to see your engagement with the youth council, and also Fit for Life, because we know them through communities. But some of the things they do bring up is quite concerning about sexism, ageism, racism. I'm just wondering how then you then use that same cohort and work with them, rather than just then another year maybe working with different.
So I think we see equality, diversity and inclusion as part of everything that we do, and working really closely with schools and all of our youth clubs and our youth activities to ensure that's embedded in everything that they do, so that we're tackling all of those isms in order to be much more inclusive and equal.
Actually, can I ask one thing? On the mental health, you said the last few years likelihood of having mental health problems increased by 50%. But only a quarter of young people with a diagnosable problem. So that means that if you have 100%, only a quarter can actually be seen. Is that what you said?
So I think there's been lots of attention on young people's mental health post-COVID, and a lot of talk about depression and anxiety, and how depression and anxiety particularly has gone up considerably.
Mm-hmm.
But they wouldn't be necessarily diagnosable issues dealt with by a Tier 4 child and adolescent mental health service.
Yeah.
Whereas, so only a small proportion of the mental health issues that we're seeing would actually constitute a referral and a need for treatment by the Tier 4 child and adolescent mental health service.
But this says only a quarter of the ones with the young people who have a diagnosable we're seeing. That's different, isn't it?
So I think it's about the thresholds for different services, and I think that's talking about the seen by the child and adolescent mental health service, as opposed to the lower tiers of primary mental health support and some of our community support that promotes well-being. So again, I use the term depression and anxiety. It can be diagnosed by a GP, but wouldn't necessarily warrant a support to be seen by a child and adolescent mental health service practitioner.
And previously, what percentage of people with a diagnosable problem would you think?
Oh gosh, that's a really good
But
question.
you see what I mean?
Yeah,
That's sort of comparison, isn't it?
let me take that away and have a look at that in order to be clear about what the comparison is.
Because it might have been 50% in the past, it might be
Yeah, I suspect it's always been,
25%.
yeah, but
That's kind of what I'm asking, whether that
Yeah.
constitutes tier 4.
yeah, so let me take it away. My instinct would be to say yes, but I'll take it away and just check.
Thank you, but otherwise I think it's great, so we are happy to accept the recommendation. Yes, thank you very much. I should say the recommendation paragraph 2, just to be clear. Will you please go on to the extending item 5, is that correct? All right. Extending the voluntary sector support month 12 months. Thanks, Tom.
Yes, I'll just say a few words about this. As I think we all know, that the voluntary sector in our fire, the organisations really do use their absolute specialist understanding at the very heart of supporting those most in need in our community. And as a council, we work really closely with all the third sector and charities, and particularly in Councillor Fox and Councillor Androck's children's and adults folios. So what this VSSF fund, it was this paper builds on the report from 2020, which everyone decided to make the voluntary sector support fund. And this paper says that because our people were supporting, they wanted to have a kind of alignment with all our council priorities and better reporting, and so we now have a much more robust monitoring framework. And the grantees, we have more grantees and more people being involved in our voluntary community sector than ever before. So we want to build on this progress, and the next year we'll then look at it again. So it's extending it, so it's going to be aligned with the council plan. It's really consulting on that. So it's simple.
Once you've extended the year, then you can figure out how the next thing is realigned, so. Okay. Questions? Catherine?
Thank you very much, Soph. And I just wanted to question, you talk about, obviously, you're going to have a matrix in which you're going to look at a performance matrix that you're going to look at all these charities against to decide for the next year whether their funding will drop or not. But in this paper, it doesn't really list what will be in that matrix, so what will you actually be judging against them? I wondered if you could just talk us through a bit, what will the matrix be involved?
Yes,
The criteria in that, that
Yeah.
you're looking at particularly.
but we have actually slightly shifted to being more kind of an analysis nature. It's not just purely performance, because as soon as we start working with organisations that's failing, they're obviously going to up their game. So in terms of saving, it's not going to be what to do that. So
Like me to?
Yes.
Yes, so we're looking at taking another number of considerations. So we provided remedial funding uplifts to some organisations, so we're going to be looking at that allocation, as well as the performance management that sort of mentioned, and also looking at the contextual situation of organisations, whether they are based in RBPC, whether they receive the money for project funding, that project has ended, but we still want to continue to support them. So there are a number of considerations we're pulling into that analysis approach.
Kim and then Johnny.
Can I just extend on that in terms of the monitoring? Because obviously, we're aware a number of the organisations occupy buildings owned by the council rent, and I just wondered if you could maybe elaborate on that monitoring. Would that be something that we obviously look to incorporate within the terms of their occupation? Also, the period of monitoring, is this a quarterly or monthly?
It's quarterly monitoring, so we have done monitoring over the past, I think, 3 quarters, and we're bringing in the returns for quarter 3, which is this quarter. And definitely, we're aware of the leases being linked to the delivery of their grant agreement, so that is actually part of the monitoring, just to make sure that they are actually delivering that. And for those organisations where there may be some challenges or concerns, we're very mindful of the fact that that is linked to their occupation and their lease of those buildings, and it is part of the suite of performance management around the funding that goes to them, and also the support that's provided from other colleagues and other directorates within the council.
Thank you.
Johnny?
Yeah, I just wanted to I think to praise Soph as all the work that she's done on the VCS here, because we can see that in the middle of a cost of living crisis, and I pushed everybody very hard given the economic headwinds on budgets as well, we have protected the VSSF funding, which I think is very welcome and will make a big difference to lots of people across the borough. So a note of praise and congratulations on the work you've done there.
Thank you. Yeah, because actually, so if we look at the recommendation to ask to agree a 12-month extension to organisations performing well and organisations that aren't won't be exempt. So I think that's absolutely right.
And you talked about analysis rather than performance, which I think is the right way to look at it.
Exactly.
It shows we want to work in partnership with our voluntary sector.
Yeah.
And that we've worked very hard to make sure that at this really difficult time for a lot of people, we're protecting that budget and making sure that people have the support they need.
Right. So are we all happy to accept the recommendations in paragraph 2?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So what is next? Whoops. Tags. Page 6, which is the modern slavery statement. And so Johnny, you're going to.
Yes, we had some ventriloquism from the full council last week, and there's a little bit again as I'm deputising for Councillor Will. But I think on the subject of modern slavery, we can all speak with one voice around the room here. It's an enormously important thing and something that I know we all take very seriously around the room. This is an annual statement that outlines the steps the council has taken to mitigate the risks of modern slavery. It contributes towards our commitment in a 5-year modern slavery strategy, ending modern slavery, our strategy for a coordinated community response between 2021 and 26. This year, training has been delivered by external experts on modern slavery in supply chains to upskill officers, to identify and mitigate some of the risks. All new and renewed contracts with the council where the business is eligible to have a modern slavery statement have been verified to ensure that they comply with that requirement. And lastly, the mapping and categorising of the council contracts using modern slavery and exploitation risk matrix has begun. So I think it's a good piece of work and well done to Stuart and the team. And also to welcome our modern slavery champion in Marie Roberto.
He's not championing modern slavery.
No.
I hope not.
Well, we hope not.
Welcome.
Good to have him here.
And can I ask this question? So this statement, how does it differ again from last year's? We upped it, or is it basically the same, or are there things where we've decided that we need to concentrate more on?
So if I may, and then I'll defer to my colleagues. So it's an ongoing piece of work. I think it's an ongoing commitment, as Johnny said, that the council is tackling modern slavery and exploitation. And the work that we've undertaken is a part of a process that you will appreciate the council is procuring and contracting. There's some very historical contracts, there's some new contracts. The measures which have been put in place over the last year have ensured that those that are contracts that are renewed and those contracts that are new are compliant. And the work that Darwin's team is now doing is to retrospectively look at some of the kind of risks around some of the existing old contracts, which we obviously respond to them. So this is the 3rd year, and this is part of our kind of ongoing process, and we develop year on year in response to the challenges and the needs that we have in regards to.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a 5-year basically modern slavery program we're following, and we are on year 3 now. So we have gone to respectively check all the contracts and just verify them. Are there any cases in modern slavery specifically within our supply chain? And now going forward, because of having commercial assurance panel, we have put in place kind of another procurement board, which is helping us. Anything we are procuring above 100K is checked properly and also procured from that side. So we are increasing.
And I think we were wondering about the data, whether actually having drilled down, being tighter on all the procurement things, are you finding instances of modern slavery or? I don't want you not the success rate, but
In terms of, we had a look on it because there is Modern Slavery Act 2015 says SPAR needs to have turnover around 36 million to be checked on modern slavery element side as well. So we had a look on it, and there isn't so far. There isn't any cases in our actually.
There are no cases.
Yeah.
That's cheery. Catherine and then Jan.
So slightly on that same point, I see on 3.1D, you do have a whistleblowing process in operation, but you've never received any whistleblowing comments.
No.
And I would have thought the whole way of actually sort of finding out about modern slavery is people actually saying, I'm worried about my neighbour, I'm worried about this going on. So are you worried that you haven't had any referrals or complaints through the whistleblowing process?
So there's kind of two different things that are going on here. So we have the data that looks at what's happening in borough and the exploitation that's happening in borough. When we look at supply chains, most of the stuff we're buying is from lots of countries around the world.
Yeah.
So we're less likely to actually get those whistleblowing cases through because we're much more detached from those potential victims. So there's kind of two different groups of people that are affected. We haven't had any whistleblowing concerns raised, and I hope that in the future we do. Although it seems like it'd be a bad thing, it would actually be a really good thing because we know that we have huge supply chains and there will be exploitation in some of those, and it's impossible to get away from that. Every business and everyone is at risk. So we hope that the more work we do, we will result in those cases.
Thank you. Jan, last.
Mine was really very short. It's just to put into sort of a bit of context how many companies we engage with that do meet the £36 million threshold. Are we talking tens, hundreds? How big of a job?
In sense, if we look on our current spend, we are not huge spender. We are very, kind of more spend goes into smaller value of contracts based on supplier side. So it's less than 50, if I'm not wrong.
50 companies.
And Josh.
Yes, one thing as well, is actually Catherine's question from earlier. How do we actually do that? Because obviously there's a threshold in order for anything like that. But you often hear stories out on this borough of exploitation happening in like health and beauty areas, maybe domestic servants who aren't getting a wage at all, or being exploited along those lines, or obviously sexual exploitation as well. How do we work closely with our police partners to ensure that's the case, especially around an element that may not be touched by this before, but in general, to ensure that that's not happening?
Yeah, so we absolutely, unfortunately, do have many cases of modern slavery across the borough, and most of those are never going to come to our attention because it's such a hidden crime. We've restarted our anonymous data collection, which is fantastic. We're one of the only places in the country that do that. We collect data from the Met Police, from the local authorities, from health, and from our third sector colleagues. So from January to September this year, there's been 29 victims and survivors of modern slavery identified in the borough. So they've either been exploited here or supported here. That is nowhere near the true picture, unfortunately. So we work really closely. We've got a very strong operational group that's been going for many years with police, gang masters and neighbourhood abuse authority, licensing colleagues, the third sector and health. So we all work together. And if we come across victims, we have a multi-agency response to make sure they're properly protected.
I would just add to that that data picture. I've chaired the Modern Slavery and Exploitation Group for a number of years. And our challenge over the years has been able to try and dig underneath the data, which is held by a range of different organisations. And we've really struggled to do that. And without that, we can't really understand the length and extent of these crimes across the borough. And by partnering with a sort of a leading VCS provider, over the last 2 years, we've been able to develop a private innovative data capture and report model, which we then use to kind of understand more the detail of the nature and extent, which is now being rolled out to the rest of London. It's only through partnering with the VCS that we've been able to get such a grip around the issue.
Thank you.
So no more questions. Can you please accept the recommendation in paragraph 2 that we approve modern slavery statement? Yes. Thank you very much. The next thing on the agenda is item 7, which is the draft budget and its updates and preparation. Johnny? Start this one.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. I think this paper is the start of a conversation about these charges over the coming months, which will ultimately lead to the budget we present in the spring. Although it presents an average increase in fees of 5%, I think we need to be extremely mindful of the headwinds that exist. I've talked about them before. Inflation, the wider economic environment are starting to affect some of our in-year positions, as we'll hear a bit more about later. So I think it's important to flag some of the risks associated, but we think this is a prudent approach at this moment in time, and we'll be reviewing that over the course of the coming months to ensure that the assumptions we're making are well informed and the right ones for the coming financial year. And likewise, the capital programme, I think there's a lot of good projects in the overall programme, but I think it's important that we keep a close eye on slippage and make sure that we're delivering against the things that we set out to deliver, and that we're very clear as an authority about the projects that we regard as essential to our mission.
Actually, can I ask a question? Well, okay. I'm probably being really stupid, but I'm quite confused. What was that for the general fund capital programme? On page 90, it says the original budget was 173 million. Yeah? Okay. On page 193, which is agenda item 8, it says, if you look at page 193, it says, and an original budget for the year of 147, set in March 2022, that's page 193. And then on page 39 of the next report, it says the original budget was 201 million. So which was it? So page 90, there's a table 1, it says original budget 173. Then page 193, paragraph 1.5, it says an original budget for the year is 147 million set in March. And then on page, it's the appendix, I think. Page 39 of the next report, it says the original budget was 201. So if the original budget was 201 million, and we're now looking at an amended general fund capital programme of 100 million, whoa, that's massive. That's 100 million slippage in the end. But I don't know what the right figure was to start with.
I think we have to come back on that, I'm afraid. But it probably is because of the slippage in the year and just how it's been expressed in those.
So but it says the original budget. That's what confuses me. If you look at them, it's the next page, page 193, and an original budget for the year of 147.3 million set in March 2022. But it just doesn't seem to follow through. So what's this? Let me see what this appendix is. Appendix 13, Capital Programme 2022, 23, current budget 200 million. So perhaps we can clarify that.
Yeah.
Because we don't even know what the budget is when we started off. It's difficult to see what the slippage was. Okay, that was my question. What about everyone else? Okay, so we're
Jumping around a bit.
the housing programme update and fees and charges. That's what we're talking about.
I was going to make a comment so that I think I have to be wary of our fees charges as well, because of course, any increased cost of the council also means a potential loss if we don't have a look at our fees and charges as well. So we need to ensure that we remain reasonable in terms of what we charge, and especially what any losses like that. I'd just like to refer to the leadership team to the libraries and archives, where we had to reassess a lot of our fees, again, to keep it still quite affordable and quite reasonable for all the residents that they may wish to use it, but again, it needs to be kept in a way that is reasonable for their own costs of the council, which provide great service. Because if we don't manage to have our fees that are reasonable across the board, we won't be able to provide a great service. So I think just reviewing those, having those set out here, I think it's statement to say that we understand it's tough, but we need to also ensure that we can still function as a local authority for the services that we provide.
So what you're saying is that you
Yes.
may think you may have to raise them more, or
Potentially, yeah, I mean,
Or- to ensure that
we
the
have to-
services.
Yeah,
good
exactly.
enough.
Yeah.
For this year, we have to, for particularly this reason, especially in libraries and archives, especially other colleagues may wish to speak to that. But yeah, it's a constant reviewing process on what we're trying to do and policies still keep us affordable, but yeah, but it doesn't let us get into any form of deficit as well.
Yeah, and I think Johnny, Alec referred to that. I mean, I think it is the fact that we are in a sort of fast-moving situation with inflation
Yeah.
and the cost that we're bearing that means that although an awful lot of work has gone into getting these figures right, based around the sort of 5% average, but then looking at specific costs, some of that is now out of date almost as soon as it's done because of the
So you're sort of warning us that we may have to,
Yeah.
look at- well, I guess over the next couple of months we'll have a better
Yeah.
idea of what inflation is and how we're going to have hit on it.
I think it's the start of that conversation.
So we should think of this as the start of the conversation, not as a kind of.
Yeah.
Closure.
yeah, which is unusual because that is
Yeah, because I think
Yeah.
it's very unusual.
But it reflects the wider economic
Uncertainty. Thank you. Jim?
I was just going to raise two things in my area that I think were worth highlighting. The first one being that we're now sort of considering electric vehicles as the baseline against which we price other vehicles. Obviously, historically, we've sort of said petrol was the baseline, but we know our residents are already flocking to the electric car market. 10% of the borough now EV, so there's a bit of a reflection there that we're now considering that as base upon which we build other charges. And then the other one really to highlight is the £1 million for capital spending on place shaping, which is already sort of busy, hard at work delivering projects. We have one which we're waiting with bated breath as to whether it will be ready for the Christmas carols next Tuesday on Chelsea Green. But it's really the council investing in its local neighbourhoods, as well as some of the bigger, more high-profile streets such as Portobello around Kensington. So just two little things to.
Will it be open? Because I saw them planting.
I was there this morning at
Yeah,
8:30.
yesterday.
The Christmas tree is lit.
Yes.
The soil is being bedded down.
Yes.
And I will be there myself, looking at Sue. I will be there myself Tuesday morning, applying grout if necessary to our stones, but it will be done. Yes.
Anyone else? Anyone else have any comments on this? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Let me just do the recommendation before I keep on. We're asked to review the capital programme, good, and launch the budget consultation to run from the 8th of December. Review the capital pipeline, and include it in the consultation, review the proposed fees and charges, and make the exceptions to fees and charges. Can we agree all that? But I do think we need another look at some stage at the capital pipeline. So,
Do you have a clarity on one question?
Oh, yes.
So the 201 million is the combination of general fund capital programme and the HRA.
HRA, okay.
So that's the relationship there, but I think your question about original slippage still stands.
Yes, whether we say, so we started at 147, what does that 100 include? Do you know what I mean? Does that include the general fund, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We just need to be clear whether what we're comparing.
Yeah, I think it's
So in the Q2 monitoring report, the 147.3 was the original budget set before the start of the financial year. And then the one in the table in the draft budget report has got the slippage coming from 21-22 to 22-23, which is one of the
Otherwise higher.
Yes.
Okay, so you set a budget of 147, and then there was slippage from the year before,
Previous
say 15 million. So actually it wasn't the HRA, then
Well,
it
no,
was
the-
slippage.
And then
that's the
it's the
next
HR, and then that's the next bit.
And then the 200 is the general fund and the HR.
Okay. I think it'd be helpful in future if you just clarify,
Yes.
so we all know kind of what we started with and what we're comparing to, if that's important. Thank you. So sorry, just to go back to our original budget that we agreed. So now we've got 100 million that we think that we're going to have, right? And originally we said it was 147 or it was 200?
147.
Okay.
General.
So we started off with 147,
Yeah.
and we now think we'll spend 100.
Yeah.
And we think we'll spend about 100 for the next couple of years. That's our intention.
The following year's 107.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So it's because I'm not an accountant.
You put my next
Right, item 8, which again is the revenue and capital monitoring position and the latest position.
Yes, so that's another finance paper. I think the overall picture is similar to what I described in one of my previous paper, which is that there are inflationary headwinds and the economic environment is challenging. We're seeing already that services are reporting an overspend of around £1 million, which I think demonstrates that even with the contingencies to be built into the previous budget, there are going to be difficult times ahead. It's a relief and good news that our treasury management means that there's an overall underspend of £2 million. But I think we need to be very mindful as we set about setting next year's budget of the trends that we're seeing, particularly in terms of service funds, to make sure that we're balancing and that we're not reporting an overall overspend. Are there any questions?
Mine sort of goes back to the earlier point around capital expenditure. I sort of watched the S106 block of funding, slightly like a hawk, but I'm afraid not much movement occurs in my eyes to focus in upon. Save for my colleague who's not here tonight has managed to extract some of the funds. But I'm just curious as to why these are not the pots we go to first, and this is developers' money that is paid to us due to planning agreements, and yet seems to never be spent. So I'm just curious as to how can we bring a bit more rigour to making sure that those monies are spent first, then borrowing.
Well, I think they are the pots. We do try and go to them first, and usually are given reasons why we can't use them for the various schemes. You're probably right. We should do more of that and put in more steps in the process to make sure we're being absolutely certain that we can use all those funds.
Sure. I mean, I appreciate there's often conditions attached, but on items such as trees, I imagine it's a fairly broad expenditure envelope, and we should be able to find ways to plant more trees up our with the money. But anyway, just something to focus on in the ongoing months ahead.
So
I just want to, when you're talking 10.7 about inflation, and thank you for having the foresight to set aside funds for this, which I know many other councils are in a lot of trouble about. And just wondered, any thoughts about the impact of inflation going forward for other quarters?
Well, I think it will continue to be a problem. I mean, obviously we got that set aside for this year, so we can use that. There are some pressures that are being funded by that. It's continuing to be a problem. We need to make sure that we've got those kind of figures either baked into the figures for next year's budget, or that we again have contingencies. I mean, the aim is to try and get it actually into the budgets themselves, because it does seem to be much more set in now than we thought when we set this budget. Obviously, there was a view that it was just a temporary blip. It's looking like it's a longer blip now. So.
okay, thanks.
Just to update you on Appendix 1.2, we've now got confirmation of the amount we are getting into the coffee money, as we all call it. We are now getting 722,000, 60% paid through health and 40% come directly to the council. Let's see. 728.
I just wanted to flag up that obviously you can see there is in Family and Children's Services an underspend of 343,000, which actually we created by opening the fantastic Queen's Mill School and saving it on the SEM transport. So that's a really positive thing. But I just wanted to flag it up because I don't think we should sort of, we have to recognise the very difficult headwinds that are coming with, as we know, the number of EHCP plans and the SEND support and the mental health and all the things that we're talking about. So I'm just sort of saying it might look good on paper here, but actually in the long term, we've got very challenging times ahead of us in this department. So sorry, I'm making a statement rather than asking.
Different next time.
Yeah.
Any other, any other comments? I would say, actually, I think you're unusual in having an underspend because it says service budgets have overspent by £1 million. And that's what we have to remember as a pressure on budgets. And we've been saved really by the Treasury management budget borrowing. Kim?
Although I will comment on my own portfolio,
Yes.
say we're under a lot of pressure on our spending, and I think we see one of the big overspends we have at the moment is on temporary accommodation, which is probably plus securing sufficient temporary accommodation at a reasonable rate. So I'm shifting there this year.
Thank you very much then. So can we read the recommendations in paragraph 2, please? Thank you. Okay, the next. Page 5. Going, sorry, it's such a good is on the corporate health and safety policy, which we last saw on the 17th of December not last year, 3 years ago. 3 years ago. So what's changed?
Yeah. Not much. It's essentially an update of the policy that was passed 3 years ago. Some administrative changes, a few changes in my team, in the structure. We've taken on another function, which is corporate fire safety, because previously the whole fire safety remit was with housing management. Also, at the beginning of the document, beginning of the policy, as well as a policy statement from the chief executive, we've also taken that one step further down, and we've got sort of personal statements from each of the exec directors.
Yes.
About what health and safety and the health and safety agenda means to them and within their remit. But other than that, I mean, the gist of the policy, the idea of doing better than the law expects us to do, which is something we agreed to last time, and also the idea of us as leaders, or you as leaders, really leading by example, setting a strong example on our health and safety and our conduct. They're the same as last time, but just a big reinforced and change of the wording.
Thank you. And I know, actually, as you were saying in paragraph 1.2, while we accept that we have statutory standards that we need to deliver, but we've always said that following Grenfell, we would always go above and beyond to make sure that we were really doing it to the best of our ability rather than just skidding over the line.
And if I may, the further we get in time from the Grenfell tragedy, probably the more important that statement becomes.
If people get a bit.
Yeah, we might begin to think about it.
Can I ask a question, Kim? I don't know who can answer this, but when we say we also work with partners in order to achieve these levels of health and safety in buildings, not in our direct control, but where we deliver services, does that include all our temporary accommodation?
We are working with temporary accommodation on that. We're working with the temporary accommodation team through a building safety group that's chaired by Dan behind me. We also work with, for example, providers of our emergency rest centres. We're working with them in order to make sure they're safe to use. Education partners, so in academy schools and voluntary aid schools, we work with them to sort of increase our standard as well and also.
Can I ask you, does that also apply to asylum seekers in hotels as well?
we weren't directly involved in corporate health and safety in the asylum seekers
So there's
project.
a Home Office check.
So there was a
without-
Home Office check, but
Or
I
is
was,
it us?
well, there was a Home Office check with that, but
Dan
also
is
the.
coming. So I don't need to put you on the spot, but as it says. in the paragraph-
That's good, so we've had a day on to.
So the answer on it, so the remit of the group that Ian's been describing is for services that are undertaken in buildings that are kind of directly commissioned or procured by us. So it does include temporary accommodation, it does include all the things Ian described, it doesn't include the hotels, which as you say,
Because we
commissioned by the Home
haven't.
Office. They're, and you're absolutely right that the Home Office and then this slightly complicated chain of contractors and subcontractors that they have for those hotels have the kind of responsibility for that. However, we're not as confident as we'd like to be that those responsibilities are being fulfilled in the way we like. But also, we have a statutory role through environmental health, building control, and public health to ensure that they're kind of meeting basic statutory compliance standards on a range of issues, which we are currently kind of actively using because we're not totally confident it's where it needs to be. But it's a different kind of responsibility to where we are directly.
But it's on our radar.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
Because I think it needs.
Yeah.
If we're going, if we're doing what we say that we are, that we're going above and beyond and not doing a statutory minimum.
Yeah.
Then I'm very pleased that you're actually.
Particularly for this cohort of people who are.
Particularly for this cohort. Thank you. Are there any other questions or any other comments? No, any from you, Kim?
No.
Thank you. And so can we accept and approve the corporate health and safety policy? Please?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, Maxilla Adult Social Care Community Hub Developments. I should say, although if I said that we have got an exempt appendix, and therefore we could go into private session, we have actually discussed this paper just before this meeting so that we could continue to discuss what we've decided in public. So we won't need to go into private session for this, nor the next item. So, here we go. Agenda item 10, Maxilla, and it's to get approval to progress with the development of the Maxilla Adult Social Care and Community Club, which is Bay 17 to 19 Maxilla Walk. I'm very excited about this, but Sarah, we need it for adult social care, no?
We do, and I don't think I can emphasise how important this project is to adult social care and to the community who, you know, this has been a big piece of work, co-designing, working with the community. And yes, hopefully it will provide what we need for our residents and the local people.
Yeah, and having seen where our residents are in St Mark's Road, I mean, they really do need a new facility. And it was agreed until 2015, so we're a few years off, understandably, but it's really important, and I think for the community, you probably know more than this, will solve the community space.
Yes, I just want to echo what Sarah said about it. It's real co-design, and from a community point of view, the bay for 3 days, 1 day is primarily Maxilla CIC, and it's really been led from the ground up. And I think it's an amazing testament to the CIC group that they've stayed together throughout all changes that's been going on. And the council's been working really well with them, and I think it really is a really great new way of working. So thank you, Adult Social Care, for working so well with the community group. And they're a very young group, the Maxilla group, they're all under 30, and so it's going to be really fantastic to see how they do. They're incredibly impressive. And whilst they're waiting for the building to be open, this Christmas they're already working with young people. They're doing a December trips project for children. So they can all have Christmas trees. They're taking them to ice skating and theatre and everything, which is wonderful. So I feel that the community aspect of this building will be in as safe hands as the adult social care aspect. So, and I think it'd be great. We'll have older people right alongside young people, which is great for the community.
And we're all happy with the budget allocation because that's been a considerable uplift since its original.
Which is both passage of time and kind of the need for further work to be required.
Yeah, and I think just to echo what everyone said, I think the staying the course on this one, it would have been very easy to walk away, but I think we've all stayed the course, worked with the community to co-design. That has come with it uplifting costs. We've been able to actually interrogate the costs a bit more and make sure that they do reflect what want to be delivered. And the Art Build, who were asking to recommend the decision made previously to a point, they have worked very closely and they've actually confirmed to us that they're only uplifting their costs by kind of a level of inflation that is fairly historic and doesn't actually reflect current day. So while they have gone up, they're not gone up as much as they possibly could have done. But I think that's a testament to them staying the course as well on this and working quite closely with the community.
One thing they have been working very closely with the community,
Yeah.
so they've all been founded.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the CSE have a great deal of confidence in our bill, which is one of the reasons we're lucky to stay here. Yeah. The one thing I was just going to add is that this is a really kind of important and encouraging milestone. But there's still quite a lot of work. I don't want us to sit here and think, right, that's done. So there's obviously still quite a lot to do, not least to work with the CSE to make sure that their business plan is absolutely proper. So, but this is an important step forward.
Yes, it's a statement of intent for us and really putting our money where our mouth has been for several years. Because it's incredibly important for adult social care and the community that we get this right. Kim?
Just again to repeat, we originally approved this key decision while I wasn't here 7 years ago, and that seems like a long, long time ago. But it's been a really great, very good journey, I think, in terms of the way that we have been working with the community. Art Build is the contractor that they've very much taken on board and worked with as well. So I think it's very good. I think the only thing to note is it's not just the approval of a contract for us to start, and we anticipate work starting in January. But there's also two options here which we're also improving, and that is the preferred option is that now we have QSs and people in place. We would like to start this contract now and evolve the final design as the contract as it progresses, rather than pause and wait until we've got a final design and then start the contract as well. That will actually shorten the program, and we think that's the best way to move forward, and it's part of the recommendation. And the other thing, just to mention what's not in here, is that we're currently now looking at an evaluation of what we do with St Mark's. So obviously we're looking to move from St Mark's into this building. It's not contained in the building in this paper, but watch this space, we'll come back on.
Good. So that actually is very good news. Is there anything else, actually, Anna or Dan, you wish to draw to our attention, or anything else we should be kind of aware of before we make decisions? It's not, that you need to emphasise, or no?
I think I'm quite proud that we've got to this point, and I think it's a true co-design scheme. And I think, as Dan said, we really need to focus on co-building this scheme, and I think that's really important. But I'm actually very happy we've got to this point.
Good. So on the basis of that, can we please agree the recommendation in paragraph 2, which is to approve the budget allocation of 8.9 and agree with the group to award the main works contract to Art Build? Yeah, agreed. And the next item on the agenda, equally, we don't believe we do need to go into private session, because I think it's quite straightforward, Kim.
No, I don't believe we need to go into a private session. This is really all about acquiring rights, principally to do with the rights of life on a development which is 83 homes, 38 of which will be social and 10 intermediate, 39 private sports facility and some community space. It's a very good project right next door to the RU school.
Josh.
I want to congratulate Anna and Laverne for changing and making it in plain and simple English for me to understand. Considering our Latin issue from last time, so I just want to say thank you for that. It looks great now.
Are there any?
No,
because the English is so
We look forward to delivering the scheme.
Yes,
New homes, new schools.
Two great schools. Great. New homes. Yeah.
No slippage. We call for no slippage.
Oh, no, sir. On budget, on time, absolutely.
On budget.
No pressure.
Okay, so can we agree the recommendations in paragraph 2? Yeah?
Agreed.
Thank you. Is there any other business? No, apart from wish everyone a very happy Christmas in a few weeks' time. Thank you very much.
Yes.